Legal myth. If you can't afford an attorney, it will be appointed to you. Wait, what? Why can't I hear this? Where's the audio?
To an attorney. Well, Gideon established a requirement that states must provide attorneys to indigent defendants in felony cases. In a later case, the court clarified that the right to counsel applies to misdemeanor and petty offenses as well, as long as the defendant faces the possibility of incarceration. Now, the Supreme Court probably should have just stopped it right there. Unfortunately, it wasn't done tinkering with the right to counsel. Instead of adopting a simple standard like you get a lawyer if the offense could lead to jail time, the Supreme Court pulled an Avril Lavigne and couldn't help but go and make things complicated. In Scott versus Illinois, the court held that the state does not have to provide a lawyer for a misdemeanor unless in prison.
Yeah, it's true. States don't have to provide counsel if you make too much money. No, I know that, but that doesn't matter. The people that we're talking about are some of the poorest fucking people in the country. Like what undocumented immigrant that was literally fucking ripped away from a goddamn work site is not qualifying for fucking pro bono counsel anyway. And pro bono isn't a court-appointed lawyer if we're talking about immigration court. But if we're talking about specifically, you have a right to an attorney, and if you can't pay for one, like the government is supposed to provide you with one, that is for, yes, that is a public defender. That is a public defender that obviously is given to people who don't have, they don't have a lot of money to begin with. You were correct about lawyers for immigration. They give you a list of pro bono lawyers that you have to contact. Yes. Know your rights when you face ICE. 1, you do not have to open the door. ICE does not have a right to enter your home without a valid warrant signed by a judge. It has to be a judicial warrant. An administrative warrant is not enough for them to fucking open the door, okay? A lot of times they say they have an administrative warrant. When they say they have an administrative warrant, that is different from a judicial warrant. A judicial warrant is signed by a fucking judge. If they have a judicial warrant, you can ask them to slip the warrant under the door with a signature from a judge. Okay? Number 2, you can ask them to leave. If they do not have a warrant and go inside your home, you can ask them to step outside and let them know you do not consent to a search. In the workplace, ICE does not have a right to enter employee-only areas without permission. Number 3, you can stay silent. The Fifth Amendment protects the right to remain silent and not to incriminate yourself. Number 4, you do not have to share your personal information. You are not obligated to provide personal information like your immigration status, place of birth, and criminal history. If asked, anything you say or do can be used against you. You should not lie. Number 5, you do not have to sign anything or hand over documents. You do not have any obligation to sign any document without speaking to an attorney, okay? You do not, I'm repeating this again, you do not have to sign anything until you speak to an attorney. Okay? Yes, I didn't get dropped off. Twitch kicked me off and I am back. I never even went anywhere. It was for 15 seconds. Number 6, you have a right to speak to an attorney. If you're detained, you can ask to speak to your attorney. ICE does not provide attorneys, so try to consult one in advance. Okay? And then there's a list that they have of like pro bono legal counsel for immigration attorneys. Make a plan. Be prepared. The federal government can deport anyone without lawful immigration status and people with status, e.g. lawful permanent residents and visa holders with certain criminal convictions. Make sure you have copies of your important documents and keep originals in a safe place. Consult a lawyer before ICE comes to your door. Make a family plan. Identify an emergency caretaker for your children. Memorize at least one emergency phone number. Know who your elected officials are. Consider keeping a signed DHS privacy waiver in a safe place so they can advocate for your own behalf. Notice it does not mention the right to have counsel appointed for you. That's the distinction you're missing here. I love you, bro, but there's a difference between having a right to have an attorney. Yeah, I'm wrong. I understand that. The court does not have a legal responsibility to appoint you to a lawyer, but you do still have a right to retain legal counsel. And there are a shit ton of pro bono immigration attorneys that can do that legal counsel work for you. Okay? Yes, that is the distinction you're missing here. I love you, bro, but there's a difference between having a right to an attorney, which means you have them present for your case for you and perhaps even appear in your stead, and the right to having an attorney appointed for you and paid for by the state. Chatters in here were saying the courts do not actually provide this information. Like, there is no, bro, so hurt to be wrong. Wait, what? No, dude, I'm not hurt to be wrong. I was responding to the chatters that were saying, no, you do not have any fucking opportunity to get legal counsel whatsoever for free. They're spreading fucking dangerous misinformation. People that were claiming in the chat that there is no, You're getting one guy, boss. I know the people are so fucking stupid because this is incredibly important information, especially the fact that you should not sign anything. Okay, you should not sign anything unless your lawyer hands it to you, unless your retained pro bono or paid for legal counsel hands it to you. This is an incredibly important part of this process, specifically because, as I said already, they literally will give migrants that are either awaiting their court date or migrants that are authorized to work on U.S. soil a piece of paperwork that is in English, even if they know that the person doesn't speak English, especially when they know the person doesn't speak English or doesn't speak English very well. They hand them a fucking piece of paper that quite literally is a self-deportation note. And when you sign that, not knowing what you're signing, you end up signing your own deportation. You're offering the government clearance to deport you legally.